Hello, everyone. Joshua Gilliland here, one of the founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. We are here to discuss the final episode of season one of Ahsoka, The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord, which is super easy to revert to C.S. Lewis. On with me on this journey is Stephen Tolifield and Bethany Bangfort. What, Bethany, you've dressed as Ahsoka for uh, going to Batu. What did you think of this final episode?
I thought it was great. I was in my mind when I was watching it, trying to see what the parallels would be to the Chronicles of Narnia, given the title of the episode, "The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord," which was that's something we can get into. Is that a permissible use of the title of C.S. Lewis's book? But I actually thought there were a lot of more than just the title, actually allusions to like the concept of sacrifice and that sort of thing that were in the episode. So I thought it was great. I enjoyed it a lot.
Stephen, for those, again, this is great audio, but you are in your Ahsoka shirt and tie for a full-on look.
Yeah, Bethany, I was sort of hoping you'd show up in cosplay. Is like support you some
Yeah.
other time.
So I will say, I hope that Rosario Dawson has a much more comfortable headpiece than I do, because I cannot move my neck in that thing. I can look forward and that's it.
Pretty stiff in the back, huh? Yeah. Yeah, I thought the episode was great. It was had a lot of really interesting moments. I was very excited to see Ezra get his third lightsaber. Like he goes through those things. Like I feel like people go through changes of clothes, but each one is pretty cool and unique and very special. So I was excited to see that. And Ahsoka and Sabine finally kind of hitting their stride as Jedi and Padawan is really rewarding to see too.
Although I thought it was very interesting that Ahsoka's stance on this was that, like, Anakin supported me in all of my difficult decisions, so I'm going to support you. But sometimes you shouldn't support a person in their difficult decisions, right? So I thought that was a very interesting take on the relationship.
Yeah.
I can't make your bad life choices work for you. We can help you recover, but that does require you to accept responsibility, and we move forward together. It's part of healing, but yeah, it's all over the place. Now, Ezra could have mentioned to Ahsoka, my first lightsaber was destroyed by your former master, but did not. And I appreciated he went from blue to green back to blue. So, and yes, it's honoring Kanan. It's probably, I don't know how many kyber crystals are on board the ship.
Yeah, Huyang must just have the kyber crystal hookup, because apparently I assume those are super rare and very valuable, but Huyang must just have a little stash of them somewhere.
If you've been at it for over 2,000 years, maybe you start picking them up and going like, this could be handy later. This could also be handy. And, again, his lifespan is very different than ours, that, he could have picked it up like 300 years, in the past, and just, he has his kyber crystal drawer. It's like, here are the blue ones, here are the green, and yellows in drawer X, and like that's what they do. Which raises an interesting question about building lightsabers. Should that be a regulated activity? Like, should you have need a license in order to do it? And I raise this because of like guns. Like, we don't want people just making ammo. No, there are those who do shells at home, but like, hey, look, I built an AK-47 in my garage that could raise flags. Now there's, which raises liability issues. Should lightsaber construction be a regulated activity? Either if you want to jump in on a pro or con position on that.
Well, I'll say it's an interesting question, because my understanding is that the lightsabers, I guess people who aren't Jedi, who are not force sensitive, I guess can technically use them. Like Han lights Luke's lightsaber to slice open the Tauntaun in Empire Strikes Back, among other examples. But I always sort of assumed that constructing a lightsaber was part of the process of becoming trained as a Force user. And a lot of the things, there aren't a lot of examples where you see someone actually making a lightsaber that I can think of, but there have been video games and stuff where sometimes when it's assembled, the pieces are kind of like floating and kind of joining in ways that are almost supernatural. So I wonder if maybe they don't even bother with regulating making lightsabers because only people who are trained or can be trusted to use them can make them. I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, because no people who wield lightsabers ever go bad.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
I recall something, and it might have been from a Clone Wars episode with Huang in it for the first time, about constructing and that you have to use the Force to get the crystal just right. Maybe, like, so you need that special skill set in order to build the lightsaber. But I don't, the regulated activity, I don't like, someone theoretically could make a sword at home. Homemade guns seem highly problematic, though.
Yeah, so it's something like that, though, you'd have to like look up on the internet to get instructions how to do it. And I guess you could get the parts, I assume. And I suppose anyone with enough mechanical inclination could sort of assemble the pieces. But yeah.
Yeah, it's like, again, does it turn into a regulated activity? Like, not necessarily needing to be licensed in order to do it, but how you get the parts could be the factor.
Remember, there was an interesting case a while ago about whether the transmission of 3 schematics for printing 3D guns, like via email, could be considered arms dealing if you're posting it on the internet or allowing it to cross borders, that sort of thing, because you can regulate the shipment of arms, across borders, right? And at least in the United States, you can. And so the question is whether this schematic, which when downloaded into a 3D printer just prints a gun, whether that would qualify.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I remember the headlines. I don't remember how that was resolved, because I thought there was litigation about that. And
It's settled from my understanding, so we never got an answer.
one of those. Okay.
Mhm.
I remember where, it was the Waymo litigation where with the ephemeral messaging. And it's like, okay, this could be really interesting on whether or not spoliation to be, using that. How does this end? Settle. So like, we don't have a direct answer. It's like, but everyone's on notice now of like, this is problematic from a discovery standpoint.
Mhm.
And we don't have any judicial opinions on it, unless something's happened since then that I just missed.
Well, from a policy perspective, generally you don't want to intrude on the activities that people can do in their homes if they're not harming anyone, right? And like, you can regulate what people can purchase, right? What supplies they can get. Perhaps you could regulate the crap out of kyber crystals if that were the way to do it. But like, actually preventing the act of someone from making something, I think would be very difficult.
And I think it would turn on what we define a lightsaber as. Again, post Oklahoma City bombing, that put the kibosh on, large purchases of fertilizer, because it's like, we don't want people making bombs. And what could a lightsaber be used for? And so easy to impale oneself, like cuts through everything except Beskar and magical metal. Like, that's problematic right there. So it's not like a bomb, but it's definitely problematic from it can harm people. And putting aside the fact letting like 5-year-olds use a lightsaber for practice time seems way dangerous. Wooden sticks seem safer. So but again, just it's problematic. But I agree with your point about what do we regulate, and what do we not. And the idea of 3D printers printing weapons is highly problematic. And so how does this story end? That said, that should be in sale on Galaxy's Edge soon, because I'll take one. In time for Christmas.
3D printer or lightsaber?
The lightsaber. I ordered the special effects Sabine lightsaber came out. I ordered it because I didn't do the ghost, so I'm okay with that. I can justify it myself. But the one Ezra made is a lot like Kanan's, and that's a beautiful lightsaber. So like that will look good on the wall with like the 5 others that I have.
Can you get the Kanan one? Sidetrack.
I think you can. I think it's at Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite lightsabers. It's really cool. I liked in the first season too how you had to kind of like assemble it each time he wanted to use it. That was kind of cool. I like that.
Until he got comfortable enough to just keep it together. And yeah, no, it's God, I'll check. I think that it's one of the legacy ones at Galaxy's Edge, or at least it was for a time. I don't know if it still is. So but again, that could be a day trip to Disneyland and we go spend money and fly back. So let's get into what happens to Morgan Elsbeth. Oh, excuse me. Is there a Second Amendment right to having a lightsaber? There's case law from New York that allowed someone to have nunchucks on the basis of the Second Amendment. I think that logic would hold for a lightsaber.
I would assume, especially given the recent Supreme Court jurisprudence that extends the right to bear arms, which is admittedly pretty broad language, but extends it to the kinds of weapons that certainly didn't exist at the time that the Constitution was written. So you can imagine that just being extended indefinitely into sort of whatever personal weapons people may develop or have centuries from now.
Or a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Or a long time ago, yeah.
Bethany, any thoughts on Second Amendment and lightsabers?
Well, I might be making this up, but I'm going to throw this out there, is that my understanding of Second Amendment law is that it applies to weapons that are in common use by law-abiding citizens and for lawful purposes, right? So that, like, you know, people have guns to go hunting or other lawful purposes that they have guns. I have no idea how that would apply to nunchucks, whether that counts as people who are weapon that is in common use by a law-abiding citizens, but maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a nunchuck fight club where people consent to, I have no idea. But I think if you are applying that standard, that the question of lightsabers, I don't know if it would be in common use because they are used by a very specific subset of people who, you know, at the time that, you know, the series is taking place, there aren't very many of them left. And I guess you could say for lawful purposes, you could use them to cut things for sure.
A very broad definition of self-defense.
Yeah.
Also, the lightsabers, if you think of the Jedi, Han refers to Jedis as kind of a hokey religion. So maybe it's an implement used in religious practice, you know?
Yeah, which is a First Amendment thing, right? Like that's even getting into a whole different constitutional protection. But I guess the point I was making earlier is that the reason that there is that standard is because nobody says that you have the right to have an atomic bomb, right? Like that is something that you can very well say, like, no, like citizens cannot own nuclear bombs. It's not in common use for a lawful purpose. And so I think lightsaber is definitely closer to like the gun and nunchuck end of the spectrum than that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like those who say, I need a flamethrower for home defense. Do you really? Because you're going to need setup time. does you sleep by, is it by your bed? Like, that's extreme. But I do think the lightsaber is more closer to the a handgun for personal protection, because that's it can be, yes, it's an offensive weapon. It's also defensive, so as well. So
and it also has a lot of very useful non-offensive purposes, like cutting through blast doors, you know.
exactly. Absolutely.
It's very
So
practical.
Yeah.
yes. So we have a Sabine uses the T6 to ram two TIE fighters, causing a midair collision. Generally frowned upon. Generally not, we don't want midair collisions. But we do have a combat situation, they've been fired upon. This sounds like good self-defense, or at least a good self-defense argument, in using the ship as a blunt instrument to take out two TIE fighters. Stephen, what say you on justification for the midair?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think that if when you're being assaulted or if someone's trying to kill you, you can use equivalent force to defend yourself or the lives of others. And using Hu Yang's ship to do that might cause some concern by Hu Yang. I guess me might be kind of alarmed by that, but there seems to me there'd be a legal justification for defending both themselves and the community of the little folks who in their pod things. Do they have a name? I feel like they must.
Something with an N.
Okay.
And ending with an I. So
they're adorable.
Yeah.
So defending that whole community of living beings from the TIE fighters seems like a good justification.
Bethany, your thoughts?
Well, I think it was certainly effective. I think, yeah, I mean, from a legal perspective, I feel like it was probably a proportionate use of force to the threat that was being faced, right? Whether it was the best course of action, I think, is up for debate, right? Because you're essentially, like, she's lucky that Hu Yang was able to get it up and running just in time, right? Like, kind of putting them in an untenable situation.
So we know there's a tail gun.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the ship launch missiles. Were they out? Is there any other armament left? Or was the ramming the only option they had under the circumstances in order to stop them? And that's not clear. They might have been out of ammo, but we don't know. Sabine does play master of understatement by saying Gotham, which again, God bless Filoni. So totally on board with that. Now we get to Morgan Elsbeth getting a gift. Let's talk about what a gift is, just out of Black's Law Dictionary, and it's the voluntary transfer of property to another without compensation. A thing that can be transferred. This is different. Like, I remember when I was young, my mother gifted me a phone line in the house, a gift that I had to pay for from day one. That didn't seem like a gift. It was a new responsibility. So like, is what happened to Morgan a gift, or is it something else? And Stephen, you have some analysis on the gift that she got.
Well, yeah, it seems to me that it's kind of transactional. That they in exchange for giving her this power up, the gift of shadows, she has to pledge to them her loyalty and her life. So it's it's not sort of just a gratuitous exchange of an item for, you know, no consideration. So it seems a little less than a gift to me, but at the same time, I guess it's the in their culture, perhaps that is something that's very sought after. It's a very rare power. Maybe it's something that's very, very special that they would really covet among each other. So maybe her being selected for that, even that kind of transactional pledge, would be considered a gift or some sort of recognition of superior service.
They certainly called in that shit right away.
Yeah. Didn't waste any time. So now you have our gifts. Now you will do this.
We need you to take one for the team. So yeah.
Enjoy that gift for however long it lasts.
Or how long you last. So yeah, I had mixed feelings on that because it's does this come with a warning label about what's going to happen to me? You're going to get these black marks on your eyes. Like it looks like you're getting burned while it's happening. Thrawn standing off in the corner looking uncomfortable. So it's like, ugh. I'm glad it's her, not me. The other thing that I started wondering about with, after the comment was made about Thrawn awoken the witches, with the comment about you do our ancestors proud, that was said to Morgan. She might have been talking to her ancestors, depending on how long they slept. Like, she could be a descendant of the night of the great mothers, literally, because they could be thousands of years old who've been in suspended animation for millennia. I mean, are we talking decades? Are we talking centuries? Are we talking a long time ago? Went back when their ancestors were writing star whales between the galaxies. Did either of you have thoughts on that, or did I just pick it up?
It's an interesting point. I think that it's unclear how long ago their kingdom fell, the Witch Kingdom of the Dathomirians. Although I guess they're not Dathomirians if they have not yet gone to Dathomir. But yeah, it's unclear how long they've been around. They seem very old, ancient even. And if they're kind of the stuff of fairy tales or legends, they're certainly not creatures of recent memory, or of the Jedi archives even. They're just stories that are told to Jedi younglings. So yeah, they could be that old, I suppose.
Bethany, any thoughts on that?
On how old they are?
Yeah.
Josh, haven't you learned by now never to comment on a lady's age?
About how long they've been asleep, not like, oh, they're good for 57. Like, that's not what's happening here. It's, have you been asleep since like the dawn of the Jedi? Like, how long have you been in a casket waiting to be, revived?
That's just a proxy, I suppose you could say. I'm not asking your age, but I'm asking
how long many have you been in existence?
Yeah, exactly. How many nights have you slept?
Yeah, because it's like all of the caskets, that are brought to the main galaxy, those could be Night Sisters because they look the right size.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be creative and useful, and they repopulate Dathomir. Now it's, the question is, are they all female, or do we have males involved in this as well? And since Maul is technically from Dathomir, and so, I mean, that's just, I always thought was kind of interesting. The males don't look like the females at all. Like, that's no horns on the head. Like, it's different. So, which is again just a very different species. Because again, Mother Townsend's mentioned, and she was Maul's mother. So who's in the caskets other than, you know, people who want to rebuild their lost kingdom? And are they from there originally? Were they stranded in the other galaxy? There's a lot for us to think about in the time ahead. We then get into the issue of it's just combat for the rest of the series. This is like self-defense. This is it's a fight. And you know, you can raise the issue of like, is it self-defense, or are we in a state of war here because our heroes go out to stop Thrawn? Like, that's a preventive measure, but they're in a state of combat with the guy who's attacked them multiple times. Either of you have any thoughts or feelings on this issue of protracted battle? That was pretty cool.
I mean, is it unethical to kill a zombie stormtrooper?
We'll get there, because there's a consent issue. So like, let's talk about those night troopers. So they volunteer. Like, and what's disclosed to them is they're staying behind in order for Thrawn and company to escape. Long live the Empire. So like, they're on board for that.
Mm-hmm.
They're told that the blessings of the Great Mothers will protect them. Did anyone say, if you die, we're going to reanimate your corpse? Was that part of the deal?
It was in the fine print.
Very fine print.
Always read the boilerplates.
Again, this a new level of taking one for the team. I'm all right dying, but you're going to reanimate me, and the big like glowing green eyes that you see through the helmet. Like, what's left of them? Like, is there any cognition, or are they just, I mean, like, they're running around acting very stormtroopery. Like, are they still there, or is it something else? Whatever it is, that should have been disclosed for them to consent to. So, but let's talk about, okay, so there's desecration of a corpse. Is it desecration of a corpse to reanimate stormtroopers to use them to fight again? And I think this is it depends issue, that if they knew about it, cool, because that way they know what they're getting into. If they're revived, like if their conscience is still there, I think that puts it more into the okay category. If they're now just cannon fodder that's controlled by magic, that sounds more like desecration of a corpse, because they're now puppets being used to slow down Jedi. Thoughts on that?
It strikes me that it's sort of similar to the real life situation of donating your remains to science for medical students or other professionals to do stuff to your corpse after you're gone. Even though you're not there to experience it, the idea of using human remains for some purpose beyond a person's death has a sort of revulsion angle to it that I think we just sort of culturally require people to consent to, and to give informed consent to that sort of procedure, even if they're not going to feel any pain or know about it after their death.
Right. So I actually decided to just look up a desecration of a corpse statute, and it's really interesting because I was wondering, does like a Weekend at Bernie's situation count? Like where you're just like propping them up, pretending they're alive? According to the statute, it wouldn't. So the one I'm looking at, I think it's Oklahoma, says any act committed after the death of a human being, including but not limited to dismemberment, disfigurement, mutilation, burning, or any act committed to cause the dead body to be devoured, scattered, or dissipated. So Weekend at Bernie's, sure, none of that, right? But if you are reanimating a corpse to go into a battle, that would be an act committed to cause the dead body to be scattered or dissipated, right?
Dismembered, at least, maybe.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
They have lightsabers, good at cutting things. Like, this seems they're going to get desecrated.
Yeah, it's Star Wars. Limbs are going to fly for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure. Well, I don't know. Is it self-defense a defense to desecration of a corpse? The corpse was coming after me.
Because normally corpses don't come after you. Like, normally this is not a problem.
But I was thinking less the Jedi who are doing the dismembering and rather the people who were animating those corpses, whether that would be desecration of a corpse, right?
I think those that did the animating are the ones at fault here. And I think self-defense falls on the Jedi defending themselves from the killer zombies. So it's like proportionally, like they kept coming. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, like it makes sense. It's self-defense. But it is the law. This doesn't happen. Like, this doesn't happen. We don't have reanimated soldiers being used in battlefields. And I hope that never happens, because that, again, would be weird. Lots of good sci-fi with that sort of thing, but this is out there. The fight includes Ezra and Sabine taking on Death Troopers, who apparently have been zombies for a while. And so when one of the helmets is cracked, you can see he's decomposed, and you can see the jaw, like very, very like Walking Dead type of bad day. And this was the reveal that Sabine really can use the Force. Reactions. Bethany, you first, that Sabine is able to call the lightsaber to herself.
I mean, it was a nice moment for Sabine. It came to her when she needed it, so good for her. The zombie trooper was pretty gnarly. I don't know, it was a cool scene overall. I mean, I don't think there's much to it from a legal perspective.
It just felt right. I mean,
Yeah.
I cheered. I cheered. I was like, this is it. This is it. She's finally going to be able to use the Force. And it was great. And it was to the side of the head. Oh, beautiful. Just so Star Warsy goodness. Stephen, what was your reaction?
Yeah, I think at least for me, whenever there's a moment like that in Star Wars, the sort of accessing the Force is such an allegory for the character tapping into their own confidence, finally kind of breaking through what's been blocking them and achieving a state of peace on some level. And so that's always really rewarding to see that a character that you've been rooting for kind of takes that step and is able to let things go and to access that power. So I thought that was great. And it's everyone cheers at any time anyone is able to use the Force for the first time. Like Luke and I think we keep talking about Hopper, at least I do. But in the Wampa's cave, and it's great. Yep.
I was like, this is it. And I was very happy to see it, because it dispels part of the, like the midichlorian issue. I get it, and I get having to have a physical description on why someone could be really in tune with the Force and why somebody is not. Like, I get that discussion. But part of me also says it's like a blood test where somebody says, well, according to your results, Jesus loves you more. Like, and that's not how faith works. Like, it's not, it's like all the apostles are for you. Like, no, like that there's an internal journey, there's faith, and we have Sabine, cross that line with being able to be in touch with the Force. Now, that doesn't mean that she's super powerful with it, but seeing her running around deflecting, blaster bolts, it's like, good. That's more than baseball. Like, it's, again, so I really enjoyed that just from the hero's journey perspective. Fight with Morgan Elsbeth, full-on duel. I thought that was some of the best choreographed fighting in any Star Wars series ever made. And hats off to the actors and stunt people who pulled that off. Even though I want to believe it was the two actresses who did the majority of it. Thoughts on dueling? Because there is a legal precedent for that. So
Yeah, sorry, I was having a
okay.
hard time unmuting. I get the it seems like obviously dueling is very frowned upon in modern times. It used to be a very sort of honor regulated thing, but now you can have mutual combat where people sort of agree to fight, and it's not necessarily everyone sort of bears their own consequences for that sort of confrontation. But I mean, I think that the confrontation on Peridia, am I saying that right? Peridia. They that's obviously something that's very high stakes for not just them personally about getting home, but it's also very high stakes for the galaxy at large about whether Thrawn gets back and revives the Empire. So it seems like it's certainly justified to try to stop that. And I'd be interested if maybe Thomas could chime in at some point on a blog post or something about whether the war of the against the rebellion, the Empire's war against the rebellion, in which Ezra kind of abducted Thrawn, whether that persists, that conflict continues to persist and continues to justify that kind of violence.
Thoughtful, very thoughtful. Bethany,
So it was a beautiful duel. I agree. Very great scene. I think the thing that really confused me about this scene was that the reason that Morgan was instructed to stay behind was to prevent the three heroes from reaching the ship, right? But she shows up, Ahsoka goes to duel her, and then she just lets the other two run behind her. And I'm like, no, wait, you gotta stop all of them. Like, that's why you're here.
she knew. Okay, this is like the no prize category from Marvel Comics at this point. She knew that there were the Death Troopers up there to deal with the younger heroes, and that the true threat is Ahsoka. Therefore, stopping Ahsoka fell to Morgan. However, this is like the Indiana Jones logic. Why didn't Ahsoka say, like, when they come up on Morgan, Sabine, blasters, and shoot her? Because could she dodge a blaster bolt? Could she deflect a blaster bolt? I don't know. And that would have made it super anticlimactic if they just.
Well, from the same perspective, it's like a lot of the troopers were respecting the duel too when it was the two of them fighting, right? And there were a lot of moments when Ahsoka was just standing there where like any one of them could just like pull out a blaster and shoot her, right? And like, I guess you could say it's a respect for the integrity of the duel, but also they're all dead, so.
Why are the zombies enjoying the show? Which goes to the bigger issue of like, is there some consciousness still left in those guys? So like, what category are they in? But also like, they're watching the show. And just like the troopers watched Kenobi and Vader fight on the Death Star. So they're like, oh, look, it's sword time. And like, and they're just watching, look at the lights, as opposed to open fire.
Well, I also feel like those troopers knew better than to interfere with whatever Vader was doing, right? Like,
Morgan's still scary. Still scary. Vader, scarier. So, yes.
But they're already dead.
Yeah. Do I keep coming back? I mean, I got shot a bunch of times, and here, Larry, who lost his head, he's gone. But like, yeah. Boy,
standard zombie rules: double tap or decapitation.
They got up, go for the head. Just go for the head. Double tap. Ezra's a stowaway, and I'm fine with that. And I'm fine with him stowing away on the shuttlecraft or just hanging out with the other troopers and then making his break for it. Totally fine.
Oh, but that guy, like all Jedi, has such a flair for drama. It's like you could have taken off the helmet before you got out of the ship. You know you could have done that. Like,
right.
Okay, that was my reaction to it. It's like, you know what you're doing, dude. Like,
especially with guns raised, you'd be like, whoa, it's me, it's me.
You flew that way? It's like, I understand keeping it on when you're flying out of the Star Destroyer, but at some point it's like, I now don't need this anymore. I'm also going to take off this uncomfortable thing and be in my comfy clothes.
No, he did, and he put it back on before he got out of the ship, just for that dramatic reveal. You know he did.
You got to make an entrance. You got to make an entrance as a Jedi.
I mean, he didn't do a Z snap on the way down, but again, a lot of flair right there. And I mean, I understand it's a big moment, but like that was my reaction watching. It's like, why didn't he call? You know, Hera, it's me. Like well, we could say the radio's broken. Like there's a bunch of stuff that could be used to explain the lack of communication. But keeping the helmet on was a very bad wardrobe choice. He could have just gone straighting out. I'm back.
Oh no, he was enjoying the moment. He was in it. Yeah.
How will he react to Jason? Like, what's that meeting going to be like?
It'll be fun. I sense a new Padawan Jedi pairing coming.
Oh yeah, the circle's complete. You like it's just again, like that's the beauty of Star Wars. I mean, just on a gestalt level of why I love Star Wars is this series was like hit all the high points. All the, like they did a really nice job of working in tons of stuff very quickly, and like they didn't abuse Easter eggs of like, hey, look here. It's like Balin standing on the pointed hand of the father from Mortis. It's like, okay, cool. I mean, rock on, dude. Well done. But this was, again, a lot of love for this series. Bethany, since you've actually dressed as Ahsoka, and that's how you went to...
You could dress as Ahsoka.
I could, but I generally don't do costumes. So, I say that with like 8 or 10 in the closet right now. But you're a huge Ahsoka fan. What was your reaction to this show?
I loved it. I'm very excited to see where they go with it. I'm very excited about the potential for some crossover with The Mandalorian and the other shows. I think it's very exciting. I mean, I've really been enjoying the TV era of Star Wars generally, even with like Back to the Clone Wars and all of that. So I'm a huge fan. I think Rosario Dawson did a great job, and very excited to see where it goes.
Steven, your thoughts?
I was a huge fan of Rebels, and I really loved that series. It was great to see kind of the answer to the question of where's Ezra that was at the end of left hanging at the end of the Rebels show, and that was great. Ahsoka as a character has always been really compelling. It's great to see her go through some changes and go through life. I think we've talked before about how we've sort of grown up with Star Wars and how some of the characters like Luke and now Ahsoka have also gone through some of the life changes we're going through now, and sort of experiencing what it's like to be an older person and question kind of what your legacy is going to be and whether you've done the right things with the people that you care about. And so I like seeing those stories. They mean a lot to me. So I thought it was great.
It's like a warm hug. Just happy to have it. I will wait a while for Skeleton Crew and Bad Batch season 3, and I know I'm forgetting something. And the strikes have
Acolyte,
yeah, that's I think done. I think they were in post-production when the strikes happened.
maybe.
And Andor was either close to done or done.
I think they had to stop filming for the strikes, right?
But I thought they were far into the process, but maybe.
Yeah, I think they were kind of midstream. Yeah.
Okay. So we have stuff coming down the pipeline, and again, grateful. No shortage of fun things to talk about. I mean, there's all the comics and the books that are out. As someone who's in the latter half of his 40s, I enjoy spending money at Hasbro and putting stuff in the display case and figuring out how lightsabers will go in my new office. So again, it's super rewarding. Uh, I was reflecting on when Return of the Jedi, at the end, because this past weekend there was a marathon on one of the cable channels where they were just showing all the movies. And I remember in 1983 at the end being sad because that was it. I mean, sure, it ends with the big feast and the heroes are triumphant, like all those things happen. But I was sad thinking, well, that's it. Like, we're not getting anything else. Like, that's the end. And other Gen Xers grew up and are in charge and have been making more. So I think that's just beautiful. And because I remember the wilderness years, when we didn't have this.
The dark times.
The dark
Yeah.
side.
When Heir to the Empire came out, as the books, I didn't read them because it felt weird to me. It's just like, I thought, like, this is just a tease. Like, it felt like hurtful. Because it's like, I wanted movies to come back. And when Phantom Menace came around, it's like, cool. And then Clone Wars, and again, it was like, so we had stuff, but it was just the feeling of that it was missing. And I really love Star Wars on TV. I think they do excellent short form storytelling. And just hats off to them. They've done an exceptional job. So with that, any other thoughts on what we've witnessed with Ahsoka?
No.
Do they have a season 2 lined up? I guess I'm just curious. Whether this will just be leading right into the next Mandalorian seasons and then ultimately the film, or if they're going to try to sort out Anakin as the father Mortis God.
So the answer is no. Nothing's been announced. I think the clue is Disney Plus and StarWars.com have called this season 1. They didn't say, and they said the season 1 finale. They did not say the series finale. Because if they said series finale, that has a final tone to it, because it sounds like we're done. This is what you got. Season 1 finale leaves the door open. And Dawson said at Star Wars Celebration Europe that she wanted to do a season 2.
Well, then we have something to look forward to. Thanks so much, Josh, for having us. I gotta jump now, but it was really fun doing this with you guys. And
absolutely. So everyone, stay safe. We're going to jump into Loki soon. Check out TikTok, where I've started posting Halloween themed short form analysis. And wherever you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and of course, stay geeky.